Why you got caught in the powerlifting trap. The powerlifters tricked you. Strength doesn't equal muscle, and powerlifting is a waste of time. Search powerlifting on YouTube right now, and you're more than likely going to find just as many videos explaining why powerlifting is a trap as you are videos of people actually doing powerlifting. The videos usually go something like this. I started lifting because I wanted to build muscle, but I was tricked by the powerlifters and began training for a sport I didn't care about, which led to me wasting a lot of time and staying small. I'm now back on track and train like a bodybuilder, and I'm finally building more muscle. Powerlifting is dumb. Now, before I go any further, I do want to make sure you all know that I am not a powerlifter and I never plan on becoming one. But let's get one thing straight. If you got hooked on powerlifting, it wasn't because someone lied to you. You got hooked because strength training is fun. Anyone who spent some time training the deadlift will tell you how good it felt to pick up 3 plates for the first time. There's something incredibly addicting about training for strength and performance, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think we need to make the distinction between powerlifting, being bad for bodybuilding, and Western-style basic linear powerlifting programming being bad for bodybuilding. The truth at the heart of things is that the squat, bench, and deadlift are all incredibly effective for adding overall mass to your frame, and for most of us, that's exactly what we need. This is why basic novice programs focus so much on the basic compound movements. They work. If we're gonna say you fell into a trap, I think it'd be more accurate to say you fell into the trap of not realizing that good powerlifting training contains within it so much more than just 3 lifts. Sure, powerlifting is a sport, which means your main goal is to get as good at the squat, bench, and deadlift as you can. But let's compare what I think a smart powerlifter would do to what you probably found yourself doing. Let's start with the bench. If you didn't know any better, you might focus entirely on the bench itself. 90% of your bench day might be spent doing the competition paused bench with some close grip bench thrown in, and maybe if you're feeling adventurous, a few sets of cable pushdowns and some front raises. At surface level, this makes sense, and this will work for some, but it's been proven time and time again that training this way is far from optimal for longevity, as well as for bodybuilding purposes, even if that isn't the main point here. Now let's look at what a smart powerlifter might do. This guy realizes that specificity is important, so practice is needed. But he also realizes that a bigger muscle has more potential for strength, so maybe he does something like this. To begin the workout, he works up to a 1 to 3 rep max on his bench press variation for the day, and follows it up with 3 sets of 10 using the same variation. He got his practice in. Now it's time to bulletproof his body. Depending on the training split, next, he might do a superset of barbell rows and some type of press variation that focuses more on another function of the pecs, such as a dumbbell fly press or ring push-ups with a squeeze at the top. The smart powerlifter knows that a bigger upper back will increase stability on the bench, and that growing a bigger chest means more strength potential. Maybe next, he realizes that stability at the shoulders and elbows is also important if he ever wants to press a heavy weight. So he does a giant set of rear delt flies, overhead tricep extensions, and barbell curls. The flies balance out the shoulders after all the pressing work, and the extensions and curls build the elbows from both sides. Finally, the smart powerlifter might end the session with some forearm and grip work and neck training, both of which will take him even further towards overall stability and make him that much more bulletproof. Now, of course, this is just an example, but what does the second powerlifter's training day remind you of? An upper body day from a bodybuilding program. Here's where I hope to help some of you out. Many of you have followed a path like this. Start lifting to build muscle, get sucked into basic and suboptimal powerlifting training, realize that it left many of your muscles underdeveloped, dropped everything even slightly related to powerlifting for bodybuilding training, and started building more muscle but lost that initial thrill that hooked you in the first place. What if instead you took a different approach? Rather than abandoning strength training as the devil altogether, what if you started using strength training, or whatever it is you find enjoyable, as a driving force that leads the way to all kinds of muscle gain? Let's look at it this way. Say there's just something about squatting heavy with a bar on your back that really gets you fired up and ready to train. Well, why not use that motivation as an engine for your bodybuilding? If you shift your focus from pure bodybuilding to working towards a bigger squat and bodybuilding, in many ways you'll be doing the exact same thing but with a different mindset. What's the best way to squat more weight more efficiently? Build every single muscle in your body as big and strong as you can. And what's one of the best ways to get incredibly big and strong? Well, to squat more weight. So let's compare paths now. In the first example, you stopped strength training so you could build muscle with bodybuilding training. There is now one level of motivation to your lifting. Just build muscle to build muscle. Now let's look at path number 2. Here you shift your focus onto your love for heavy back squats and start doing more bodybuilding training to get better at that. Now you have 2 levels of motivation. Build more muscle to get more muscle and so you can squat more weight. I'm not saying that one path is better than the other. I'm just trying to give you something to think about here. If you're anything like me, and I'm sure a lot of you are, the first time you lift something heavy after a long break, it's gonna feel like you're home again. Why would you give that up entirely? You can put your head down and grind away at endless bodybuilding movements and never do anything else because to you think it's probably the best way to get bigger, and who needs to enjoy the gym, right? Enjoying your training is overrated, right? But why not give yourself something else to work towards too? We have this idea in our heads that the more we suffer, the better off we'll be, but that's simply not the case. And I'm not saying that it's torture to train for pure muscle gain. I actually find it quite enjoyable, but adding that extra layer of fun is only gonna help. And one last thing I can add here is that I don't buy the idea for a second that strength training is suboptimal for muscle gain. Like I've said many times before, strength equals muscle and muscle equals strength. You can't have one without the other. They go together. The only difference is going to be your mindset. It's going to be how you approach your training. So if your main goal is to get a bigger chest, well, depending on whatever exercise you do, whether it's the bench press or some machine press that happens to stimulate your pecs better, eventually you're going to have to add weight. You're going to have to get stronger. You can't hope to press 95 pounds with the same number of reps forever and build a massive chest. It'll work for a bit, but eventually it's going to stop working. And the same thing is true for strength training. There's only so strong you can get when you only have 20 pounds of muscle added to your frame. Eventually, you might have to throw in some variations. You gotta stop doing the straight up bench press and start doing some machine presses or some Larson presses or whatever it is, because you gotta get bigger. That's just how it works. Remember that your driving motivation doesn't even need to be lifting related. I just used powerlifting as an example because we can all relate to it, but your motivation could be anything from becoming a competitive bike racer to becoming the most fit construction worker ever. I don't know, anything. Remember that getting bigger and stronger will help with pretty much any physical activity, so you should probably do it. But that doesn't mean that it needs to be your main focus. You can always have that other primary goal that's driving you forward, whatever it may be.